Greetings, friends. My name is Pavel Shtelmoch, and now we will dive in the top news of this day. The Ukrainian Defence Forces hold the initiative in most areas of the front line, conducting successful operations on land and at sea, destroying military facilities in enemy's deep rear. The Ukrainian Defence Forces will not ease their pressure also in the autumn and winter period. Offensive actions along the entire front line will continue in accordance with the counter-offensive plan. The combat capability of the Defence Forces of Ukraine is growing. Abrams tanks, ATACMS missiles in future, and I hope F-16 fighters will soon contribute to the victory over the occupiers.
There was also a separate informative intelligence report on the situation in the Russian military-industrial complex. We clearly see the areas where pressure on Russia needs to be increased so that terrorist capabilities do not grow. Sanctions are not enough. There will be more. There will be more of our own Ukrainian actions against the terrorist state. As long as Russia's aggression continues, Russia's losses must be tangible.
The Ukrainian military does not fight with quantity, but with quality and skill. The life and health of our defenders are an undeniable priority for the Ukrainian command. Ukraine appreciates the advice of outside experts, whoever they are, but it has its own strategy, guided by combat experience. And, as was reported by the Institute for the Study of War, Ukrainian armored vehicles are operating beyond the final lane of the Russian defensive layer that Ukrainian forces in western Zaporizhia Oblast are currently penetrating, although ISW is not yet prepared to assess that Ukrainian forces have broken fully through this Russian defensive lane. Geolocated footage indicates that Ukrainian armored vehicles advance south of the Russian anti-tank ditches and Dragon's Teeth obstacles. They are part of the three-layered defense and engaged in limited combat immediately west of Verbove, on 18 kilometers southeast of Orikhiv. It is unclear if Ukrainian forces retain these positions. The presence of Ukrainian armored vehicles beyond the final line of the current Russian defensive layer indicates that the Ukrainians have secured their breach of the first two lines of this layer sufficiently to operate vehicles through the breach. Ukrainian forces have likely suppressed Russian artillery and other anti-tank systems in this area enough to bring their vehicles forward. The Ukrainian ability to bring armored vehicles to and through the most formidable Russian defenses intended to stop them and to operate these vehicles near prepared Russian defensive positions are important signs of progress in the Ukrainian counteroffensive. During the meeting of the board of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Shoigu said that in the war with Ukraine, consistent implementation of the action plan by 2025 will allow achieving the goals. The Kremlin is trying to reassure the Russian society, which is disoriented and desperate due to a lack of understanding of the realities and further prospects of the war, with another false promise. The term by 2025 is the same illusion as the capture of Kiev in 3 days. Victory by May the 9th and other predictions of the so-called special military operation. None of the previously announced goals of the so-called operation have been achieved. The failure of Putin's plan is obvious because there is no plan. All the words from the Kremlin are just reactions to the events on the battlefield. Where are all the goals of demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine? There are no such words from Moscow because these goals couldn't be achieved. So there are new goals which, according to Shoigu, must be achieved by 2025. And does anybody know these plans? Or the plan is to freeze the front line till the presidential election in 2024, hold them, and then maybe announce about ending the war and return to the scenario that was used in Donbass in 2014 to 2022. Unfortunately for Russia, and fortunately for the entire civilized world, this will not happen. Russia will inevitably be defeated.
For every strike on Ukraine, there will be a response for the Russians. Demilitarization of Russia is a necessity, as the world should not tolerate a bad man with missiles. It makes much more sense to deprive the insane of the ability to use weapons as well as the weapons themselves. For now, the enemy can still carry out acts of terror, and he did it this night in Odessa, but the further away, the more he will lose them. Andriy Yermak, head of the office of the President of Ukraine, in Telegram.
And Russia could end the war much faster by simply withdrawing the occupation troops from Ukraine and starting negotiations on a way to compensate for the damage caused to Ukrainians. The Kremlin's prolongation of the war only increases the scale of Russia's future catastrophe. A negative political resonance was caused by Anthony Ross, Speaker of the House of Commons of Canada, greeting the 98-year-old veteran of the Waffen-SS Galicia Division, Yaroslav Hunka, who was present in the Canadian Parliament at a meeting with President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky. Anthony Ross's act was not intended to be a provocation against Ukraine or Canada. Veterans of the Galicia Division who have been living in Canada for many years and are active in the Ukrainian diaspora and in the public life of Canada were inspected by the Government Commission of Inquiry on War Criminals in the mid-1980s. There were no Nazi criminals among them. The veteran environment of the Galicia Division in any country does not profess Nazi or neo-Nazi views, but positions itself as participants in the national liberation movement of Ukraine. The participation of Ukrainians in the war on the side of Nazi Germany is a historical tragedy. The reason for it was that Ukraine did not have its own state during World War II. Today, Ukrainians are fighting to preserve it. That concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more news from Ukraine. Your support really matters. Goodbye.